finally back. Yes, I know this took a while, and my apologies to that. I just took a little break from making videos. But another season of Death Battle has come to an end, and oh boy, was this one hard to rank. So many great episodes in this season, making it easily one of the best of the entire show. And now, it's time to place them, 1 through 17. If you want to see some of my more in-depth thoughts on these episodes, then go check out my individual reviews for the second half episodes, as well as Excalibur vs. Raiden, or my ranking of the first, although I would not recommend that video because it's not very good. Now, like I said, I won't be going too in-depth. However, most episodes I have quite a bit to say on, so some segments may be longer than others. Also, make sure to go check out Capsirus' video on his ranking of Season 9. Now, without further ado, let's get into the ranking.
Until then, wait, watch out, it's there!
Where?
Behind you!
I got it!
Yeah, this one is still the weakest for me. Boba Fett vs. Predator, aka John Yautja, is still a good episode, but it just doesn't stack up to all the other amazing stuff we saw this season. But when I still think the worst episode is still decent, then that should tell you how good the others are in comparison. Unfortunately, this one just wasn't in a season where it would stick out. But now, let's actually talk about the episode. The analyses are fine, I guess. I just find them kind of boring. There wasn't really much that actually sticks out, so it's kind of a slog to get through. There aren't really any jokes that stick out as funny. Heck, some of them are even kind of annoying, especially Wiz pronouncing Yautja 4 separate times. And nothing too interesting is being discussed either. Though I do like the intro to Predator's analysis, that was pretty neat. But it's nothing too terrible, it's just kind of there. And the animation is kind of the same way. There are some really cool and fluid moments, but it's balanced out by some moments that are janky and just plain weird, like the beginning and end melee fights. Now, like I said in my ranking of the first half, I am a fan of the ending with Predator not being able to see Boba due to the fire. I thought that was an extremely creative way for Boba to take the win, although I do find it weird that Predator stopped swinging when Boba fell right in front of him, and the lightsaber was shown before to be hotter than the fire. And on topic of that, it didn't really feel like they knew what they actually wanted to do with the Predator. He exhibits traits of multiple different types, and for supposed peak Predator, he isn't really too smart or honorable. I'm not huge on the Predator series, and there are people out there who are far more versed on them than me, so I can't really point out exactly what was off with the Predator, but from what I've heard from those people, they didn't really represent them too well. Now, I'm not saying there aren't any standout moments. There's the aforementioned bit with the fire where Predator tries to look for Boba, but Fett is able to get the jump on him, Fett coming across the bodies, some of the melee fights, and Fett getting his arm cut off. I also like how they implemented Predator's voice recorder in there, with him repeating things Fett said earlier in the fight. But speaking of that, the death is probably the weakest one of this season, to be honest. Actually, never mind, second lamest. The self-destruct comes across so suddenly. The lightsaber barely did any damage to Predator himself. All that really happened was his scythe broke. And Predator was dominating Boba Fett the entire fight, so why did he decide to kill himself the moment Boba starts taking the edge? Like I said in my first half ranking, it's Gray vs. Ez death all over again. And the killing impact is just weak. Both of their final lines are cool, but Predator's face just looks so dumb. The blast somehow ends up being less impactful than the smaller bomb Boba used earlier in the fight. Also, it's supposed to be blue, not orange, but whatever. And the somehow very small crater, which doesn't even look like it was caused by the explosion itself, makes this death so weird. Now, in the post-analysis, they go over the self-destruct very well, saying that Boba would need to get away from it for him to survive. But then that begs the question, why didn't Boba get away? He survived without any implication that he was able to get out of there. Now, to end on a positive note, I like how the fight feels like the two's arsenals are both at their maximums, but over time it just keeps getting more and more limited. That was fun. Although some parts of their arsenal feel like they just go to waste at times, Like, the big rocket that they make a big deal over being able to destroy ships is just a small attack at the beginning of the fight. That was kinda lame. Also, the music is pretty good. Has both Star Wars and Predator feels to it. Fits the fight well, and is a pretty intense piece. I really like it. Now, like I said, I still enjoy this fight. It's just the weakest one out of the lineup for me, but still fairly solid. And we're just getting started.
Good evening, I'm Michael Myers. I have enormous psychological problems, and I'm going to take them out on you.
Again, I have to reiterate, I don't think this episode is bad. Just slightly disappointing. Jason vs. Michael was an episode nearly everyone was hyped for, so it makes sense that it was a letdown for some people. Personally, I'm not too bothered by the quality of the episode, but I have to place it somewhere, and it's just got a weak offering for me. Now, there are a lot of things that made me put this one over Boba vs. Predator. For starters, I like the analyses a lot more. Sure, it's kind of disappointing that they didn't get to stats or anything, but I kind of get it with characters like these. They aren't really known for their big feats, though it would have been nice to see Jason punching someone's head off. I like how it took a different turn in the post-analysis where they focus on who is more unkillable, and I love how they covered these characters' stories. It's rare we get characters like these, so it's nice to see their series get covered. Although the very short runtime doesn't really help this episode at all, it means there isn't much time to actually go in depth, so it feels like they're just rushing things at points. Like Jason's analysis, for example. It went by way quicker than I was expecting it to. But what we got is still really enjoyable, and the cutaways are a nice change of pace with all the characters just hanging around the campground, telling the tales of these combatants, which is a neat way to see the analyses as well. It makes them feel unique. I especially like the teleportation argument, how they talk about these characters making them feel like serious threats, and everyone getting picked off one by one, with a suspenseful ending with a figure, presumably Jason, appearing behind them, again, with that Giga Chad chin. So I really like the analyses, and the animation is, well, also fine. It feels unique with how they treat it like a fight in a horror film instead of just a regular fight. With the filter, victims constantly getting chased around. It's fun. But my biggest problem with Jason Voorhees versus Michael Myers is that we don't get enough of, well, Jason Voorhees versus Michael Myers. We barely get any scenes of them actually fighting, only rounding out to about a minute of the entire animation of them going head to head. Which, yeah, you have so many ideas and so little time, but I feel like when you can include 15 seconds of uncut footage of Jason just walking away, and 7 seconds of Sam or Joe victims simply looking around, then I'm sure you could have done without some stuff. Maybe if all the victim stuff was handled in the first minute or minute and a half, then the rest could have been saved for uninterrupted fighting, but I don't know. It's just that when we see these characters in death battle, it's because we, well, want to see them on the show. Now, of course, Jason and Michael aren't misused or disrespected here, they're just kind of barely used. And many scenes with the two actually fighting doesn't quite feel right either. This isn't two hardened killers slowly slashing away at the other, hacking them away piece by piece. This is just a regular sword fight. These guys aren't known for whiplashing around that fast. Now, of course, there are plenty of other problems like the weird facial expressions and some jank, but none of that is really the fault of the animator Dev Lartemis, as he wasn't exactly at the greatest point in his life while making it. Now, I'm in no way saying that he shouldn't have done this one, because, well, one, that's just flat out disrespectful to him, and two, most of my problems come from other standpoints. The actual quality of the animation isn't really a big deal for me on this one. So, yeah. There are some standout moments I like, such as Pamela's performance, Jason chucking that poor girl's body, the tree stab, Jason twitching his fingers to show he's still alive, the Halloween sting with Sam skedaddling away, the knife still being on the tree with Jason missing, which is a detail I missed in my review, the guy getting stabbed through the grave, Michael pinning down Jason, Pamela's final speech, us getting to see Jason's eyes to show that while he's still evil, he's not as evil as Michael, and the kill. There's a lot of great stuff here. Wish they could have taken advantage of the fact that it's animated and had a way more brutal kill, but this one is fine enough, I'm not complaining. So yeah, there is plenty of stuff to like. That just proves that in a lesser season, these episodes would be way more substantial. Anyways, while I still like the episode, it has numerous flaws that I just can't ignore. Still though, it's a great way to celebrate Halloween the holiday and bring in a whole new subgenre of movies to Death Battle. Let's hope they do another for Season 10.
So many nerds, never enough lockers.
Deku vs. Asta is probably the most nothing episode for me this season. It's nowhere near bad, it's just, honestly, I don't really know what I want to say that I already haven't said in my review. But I'll try, I guess. The analyses are fine. Both do a pretty good job talking about the characters' abilities and stories. The locker joke is overdone, but kinda funny. The cutaway gags are nothing special, and yeah. The animation is also a pretty fun time. Personally, I don't think it deserves all the hate it gets. Not saying it's a hidden masterpiece or anything, though. There are some bits of animation which are really smooth and nice to look at. The fight feels fast and the characters are always zooming around the battlefield. Their abilities are used really well. The fight has all the pieces of being really good, it's just that there isn't really much to unpack when it comes to it. I like the voice acting, they do a pretty good job. I especially like Asta's bafflement at Deku not using magic, Asta saying he's never going down, and Deku's 1,000,000% plus ultra. I also like the parallel between the two saying that they just gotta hit the other really hard. As well as Deku wondering why Asta's sword isn't sharp. That was pretty funny. So to just go over things that I don't really like then, Deku's model looks off to me. It works fine in action, but it just looks way too skinny and his skin is way too pink. Also, his hair just looks weird. But like I said, it's fine in action. The Black Whip looks off. It doesn't really look like how it's supposed to be. It looks more like a Venom symbiote than anything. I don't think we needed Deku to use 3 consecutive Detroit Smashes. It seems a bit excessive. Deku throwing the building doesn't look like he's using the wind, it looks more like telekinesis. Deku's run looks weird. The 8-bit sounds here kind of feel off unless that's a reference I'm not getting. Asta looks like he just gets hit into nothing here. Asta doesn't really give a scream for his final attack at all, he just kind of grunts. And Asta stabbing Deku even though he's already dead, which apparently I hear he can sense by the way, seems out of character. So yeah, I have plenty of flaws, but none of them are really deal breakers for me. But on the contrary, none of my big upsides are deal breakers either. There's nothing outrageously bad, but nothing outrageously good. Sure, that means the episode is balanced, but it doesn't stick out, you know? Something that does stick out in the episode, though, is the track. Strongest Alive is really, really good. I personally don't think it to be the best of the season like a lot of other people do, but I still think it's really good nonetheless. So yeah, it's still an averagely good watch, but it isn't anything too special. Now, Death Battle. Where is my Asta vs. Hercule Satan Black Clover vs. Dragon Ball Death Battle Season 10 Episode 1 announcement?
Magic.
Scarlet Witch vs. Katana is an episode I still find pretty good, if a little bit average. The analyses are pretty great, it was fun to hear them talk about these characters' full potential as well as their personal struggles, and the animation is enjoyable. Definitely a step up from Strange vs. Fate. The voice acting from Lauren Mayfield as Satana is one of my favorite performances of the season. She brings the character so much energy. Satana always feels like she's having the time of her life being able to finally go all out on someone. And Cassandra as Scarlet Witch, while it isn't the best performance on this show, some lines just aren't delivered too well. What she gets right, she gets right. Especially the no more sound line. That had to have killed her vocal cords. So the voice actors are really solid, and the fighting is pretty cool as well. What it lacks in choreography and action, it makes up for it in pure spectacle. The animation is beautiful. The harsh reds of Wanda's attacks contrasting with Satana's cool blues are pretty to look at. Wanda's rampage has so much impact, and the shot of Satana falling is just mesmerizing. And there are also a ton of standout moments as well. Like the Avengers vs. Justice League battle, the bit where they explain the differences between each other, Zatanna reaching out of the screen, Zatanna juggling universes, Zatanna coming out of the black screen, and the kill with the incredible No More Witches line followed by Zatanna sawing Wanda in half. which was a really creative way to have it end. It also brings Zatanna being a magician into play. Again, I kind of wish it was more trippy and reality warpy, like having Wanda think she won but Zatanna crushes her with the KO screen or something like that. But hey, at least Zatanna didn't do anything like strike her so hard she turned into nothingness. And if you couldn't tell, Zatanna absolutely stole the show here. I already liked her as a character, but this episode made her one of my favorite DC characters, and I really enjoyed her portrayal. And finally, the music is pretty good. Not something I would listen to on my own, but it definitely fits the fight well. But missed opportunity to have it spelled backwards. So yeah, I do like this one. I definitely recommend it, but it's far from what the best of this season has to offer.
Yeah.
You're laughing. Finale is Gogeta versus Vegeta, and you're laughing.
I really hate to put the finale of this season this low, but unfortunately, it just doesn't deliver like the rest of the season does. Obviously, it's still a great episode. The analyses are fun, though boring at points with them basically talking about the same person twice. The animation is still really kick-ass, despite it apparently having many flaws that Dragon Ball fans are pointing out. The track is still a banger. And yeah, I don't have much specifically I want to say. I like Shenron being there, that was pretty cool. Wiz and Boomstick just geeking over Dragon Ball was cute, and the animation is just fun to watch. The voice acting was really good, the hits feel impactful, and there's so much going on visually. Something I really love that I don't talk about a lot is vibrancy. I love popping colors and beautiful visuals, which is why I love the look of series like Mario and Sonic, for example, as most of their environments are lush and full of things to look at with many bright contrasting colors. And I think this episode nails that department. So yeah, I think this episode overall is really great. I just don't get much out of it. And part of that is because I'm not a huge fan of Dragon Ball. If I was, I may have more to say here. One of my good pals, Potato King, is a massive fan of the series and he ended up liking it. And that's great. Now, some Dragon Ball fans I hear don't like this episode, which is also fine. And even Potato King, while he still does like it, does notice a lot of the problems with it. But that just shows the exact same thing as the former example did. This episode was catered specifically to Dragon Ball fans. This isn't like the Pokemon or Mega Man Battle Royale, where those may have been same series fights that could draw in fans of those respective series, but they were matchups that non-fans would still might be interested in. Here, the only people who really showed any interest were Dragon Ball fans. Now, sure, we all knew the episode was going to be great, but it was hard to get excited as we just weren't that intrigued. Now, I can definitely see why they would want to do this matchup. First off, the Dragon Ball community is massive, so they definitely have a huge audience. And secondly, this is practically the Dragon Ball versus debate. No other matchup featuring two characters from the series is this prominent in the fandom, and even the series itself given how many times they bring it up in official sources. But my biggest problem here is that it was the finale. Season 9 had so much hype for it. It had so many great episodes, so many cool matchups, it had lots of big fights and lots of new fights, so we all expected the finale to be something huge. This episode could have worked as a regular episode. And if it was, then I'm positive that it would not get all the hate it gets. Hell, this would have made for a great Season 10 premiere. It's just that where they decided to place the episode is what I think garners a lot of the backlash. Now, I do think some people are being a bit overdramatic on it. It definitely doesn't deserve all the hate it gets just because you aren't a fan of the matchup. Now, if you just dislike it, that's okay. But the matchup itself should have no effect on your enjoyment of the episode. Unless you're a certain Season 1 episode I shall not name because hating that episode because of the matchup is totally warranted, and I think everyone should despise it for that very reason. But back to Gogeta vs. Vegeta, I like the episode fine enough, but I think it just leaves a lot to be desired. Well, no matter what, at least we still got Dragon Dance. God, that song is so good.
All Aquaman can do is body the best.
Black Adam vs. Apocalypse is yet another episode that's about middle of the road. The analyses don't leave too much of an impact, but they're not bad at all. The Shazoo joke kind of fell flat, and the cutaways were nothing too special, but all around they were pretty enjoyable, and the animation is pretty much the same way. Nothing too outstanding, but a fun time. Something that does stand out though is the background. My god, Death Battle has a ton of great looking settings, but I don't know, something about this one in particular makes it look so great. Maybe it's the textures, the lighting, who knows. All I know is I just love this shot of the comic going into the start of the animation and this tracking shot of Adam. And something else I love is the voice acting. Adam sounds great and pulls off the Shazam yell pretty well, and while some people don't like Apocalypse's voice, I personally think he sounds incredible. Especially with the filter. Sure, it makes him kind of hard to understand at points, but I think it makes him sound like a huge presence of fear. I love his character in the animation. And something else I love is the death. Pretty much the entire group I was watching with were expecting Adam to win, so seeing such an upset in Death Battle was surprising but also really cool. Especially with that kill. We were all just kind of shocked watching it. Sure, it is kind of vague on why Adam didn't finish his Shazam scream, and I think the scene of Apocalypse stomping on Adam lasted a bit too long, but everything else is perfect, with Apocalypse making sure that the last thing Adam sees is his city burning down under his reign, and promising that it will fall by his hands before finishing him for good. That was a super scary and dark way to end it, but God, I'd be lying if I didn't say I loved it to pieces. But it's still not my favorite kill of the season though. And one more thing I love is the track. I've seen a lot of people mixed on this one. You're either obsessed with it, or just think it's okay. Personally for me, I just really like it quite a bit. The chorus sounds great, and the bits of rapping are actually pretty catchy, and it fits the fight very well. However, some of the lyric choices are kind of hilarious, like the infamous "I'm powerful, I punch the best." Now, to be fair, it is probably referring to Adam contesting with the most powerful entities in his franchise, but the way it's said is probably the reason why it became such a meme in the community. Now, some highlights include the aforementioned tracking shot, the shot of Apocalypse with the moon as the backdrop, the whole thing with the Death Seed, this shot of Apocalypse, Adam bringing out the yellow lantern ring, the high-speed clash that causes the moon to break, Adam telling Apocalypse to get out of his country, yet another shot of Apocalypse, Adam flying around Apocalypse's arm, and the shot of Apocalypse lifting his hand off the ground. So, obviously, this episode has a lot of magnitude to it. I just think that, all in all, it's just a good episode, and that's about as deep as it gets.
Because not every problem can be solved by hitting it really hard.
Bullshit.
I still love Thor vs. Vegeta a lot, but a lot more episodes this season just hit a little bit harder than this one personally. Now, I really love the analyses just because I like the characters. That's about as deep as it gets. Sure, there were some funny jokes and all, but I really just like hearing them talk about characters I enjoy. Now, before getting into the animation, I have got to mention the track. Princess of Pride is so good. I love the Viking rock aspect to it. It's so high energy and very fitting for these two. Another aspect of the fight I love is the background. This is yet another landscape that is just absolutely mesmerizing. And as I said previously, I love the popping, vibrant colors. The bright green grass and the blue sky, as well as all the effects of these two's attacks, makes this one of the most visually pretty death battles to date. Now, finally getting into the actual fight is where I'm starting to run out of things to say. Sure, it's a very fast-paced fight with mighty blows being delivered left and right with some great voice acting, but I feel like I already went into enough detail in my first half ranking. I love Thor acting like his jolly old self rather than some angry guy like in Thor vs. Wonder Woman. I love Vegeta catching Mjolnir before it pulls him down. The final flash scream is immaculate, and so is the death as well. So yes, there are plenty of things I love about this episode, but on the contrary, there are also some things I do have problems with. I feel like they could have handled Vegeta's transformations a bit better. Personally, I'm not too bothered by how rushed it was, but I feel like they could have executed it a bit differently. Next, the beginning fight is a bit stiff. All the hits just don't feel that fluid, except for the Ki Blast bit. And finally, I wish that Vegeta using Hakai on the axe was handled like it was in the storyboards, with Thor having it cut Vegeta instead of the animation where he just blocks it and then is completely done with it at that point. Also, I just think Thor using Mjolnir to bring it back would have been cool, okay? So, as you can see, pretty much all of my problems are in the beginning part. So after that is where I feel this episode gets most of its merit and goes from good to great. But, yeah, like I said, I feel like others just have a bit more of a lasting impression on me.
I'm not crying. I'm only crying really hard. Holy shit, hold me, bro.
Please don't touch me.
Speaking of that, Tantra versus Jonathan is really solid. I didn't think it was too substantial aside from the ending at first, but after letting it sink in more, the whole thing is hella fun. The analyses are pretty good and the animation is just a good time. I love all the wacky banter and action given the types of characters these two are. Of course, the setup in Tanjiro saying that Nezuko is his sister implies that this could have been resolved easily, but with characters like these, it's hard to make up a scenario where they would actually try to kill each other, so it makes sense with what they went with. And speaking of that ending, I love it. The style change represents and helps in the sudden change of tone, and I love Jonathan holding Tanjiro and promising that he will protect his sister no matter what. And the shot of Jonathan giving Tanjiro a quick death by stopping his heart with his arm falling down is really sad. And followed by the suspense of Nezuko jerking her hand away from Jonathan makes this such a sorrowful conclusion. This fight just has so much emotion to it, mostly thanks to the voice acting, but also due to the visuals and writing too. From Jonathan's scream of pain when he gets stabbed, Tanjiro's numerous inner monologues, and pretty much the entirety of the setup. Also, I know I've already mentioned this in the past few segments, but once again, the visuals are incredible. It's yet another gorgeous looking background, which we actually got a tour of for channel members. I hope they do this more often because I love seeing landscapes, and I'd love to see the full extent of all the amazing settings that Death Battle has made for us. And on top of that, there are so many visual effects happening all the time, from the overdrives to the breathing effects. The water breathing kind of looks a bit stiff, but still good, but man, the fire breathing looks amazing. Yeah, to be honest, that's the most I have to say on this episode. Forgot to mention the analyses, they're okay, the cutaways are pretty funny. I heard Jonathan has some weird scaling, and yeah. Overall, it was a really, really good episode.
Agony! Agony! Beyond power of speech!
Hercules, or Heracles, whichever you prefer, versus Sun Wukong is such a unique episode, and that is not just because of the matchup. Although that does play a factor in it, I don't think anyone ever expected for Death Battle to bring mythology into the equation. It was just so surreal to hear Wiz and Boomstick discuss their legends and abilities. And it made for some really fun analyses. The editing is great, they pay great homage to each of their tales, and the writing was very clever and explorative since this was an entirely new medium for them. I find the cutaway gags pretty funny as well. Now the fight, that was also extremely enjoyable. First off, the effects and custom hand-drawn background are absolutely gorgeous, like the past, 3 sections I've said now. Not only does it fit them very well, but it's also just pretty to look at, I mean, come on. Especially the black strokes of ink that come out of Wukong's attacks. Oh, and the idea to make the fight take place on a scroll that reveals more of itself as the fight progresses, and even affect the fight at one point, was absolutely genius. It makes it feel like this is a tale being passed through generations instead of just a regular fight. The narrator even adds a lot to this fight. I thought he was going to keep on stopping the fight and become an annoyance, but they use him very sparingly. And when they do use him, it's for moments that are natural pauses in the fight. Now, I might as well go ahead and talk about my biggest problem with the animation, the ending. More specifically, the death. I really like how the two's god forms come into play at the end, and their climatic clash is really cool and dramatic, helped by the music. But the death is extremely underwhelming. Although, I'm not sure if having a brutal kill for someone like Herc would be controversial or not. But the killing blow just doesn't make any sense. And sure, it's explained to us, but could they have made it any less subtle? Also, I cannot for the life of me figure out what is happening in this shot. I've stared at it for a while, and I've got nothing. But now on to things I do like, which is very plentiful, mind you. Firstly, the music. Hero's Journey isn't really a track I listen to on my own a lot, but it complements the fight very well. It's fun when it needs to be, but can also be very dramatic and intense when the situation calls for it. I love the beginning conversation, the clone versus arrow fight, the really creative trading of abilities with Wukong using his animal transformations to restrain Herc, but in turn Hercules uses the Crotalus to destroy every clone, Herc's reaction to Wukong's 3 heads, and my personal favorite part, the giant Ryu Jinju Bang crushing Hercules, but he lifts it up and chucks it in the air. Now, there are a few nitpicks. Hercules saying, "I am Heracles" at the start of the fight feels out of place. I wish Wukong used more animal transformations, and I also kind of wish he did his signature backflip. Although it is said that this shot right here was intended to be that. But overall, this was a great introduction into this medium for the show. I really hope we get more sometime. If I got to choose, I would probably go with Anubis vs. Hades, but I would also really like to see Zeus vs. Odin or some sort of Cthulhu matchup.
Excalibur had to have been swinging at 9% the speed of light.
Calc King dethroned!
Raiden vs. Excalibur was yet another bonus episode, like the Boys Battle Royale, and since that was the last and, well, only bonus episode, the expectation for this one wasn't the greatest. Well, for me at least. But I was pleasantly surprised with how it turned out. The animation itself is nothing special, there's not really much that sticks out. However, I did like how fast-paced it was. The action never really slowed down. And I love how Boomstick and Wiz interacted with the characters in the fight. That was just plain hilarious and extremely creative. However, easily the best part of this episode is the analyses. The beginning interaction is just Wiz and Boomstick on a day off, and because of that, we get to see them interact in a non-professional setting. We just get to see them be friends, hanging out. We have some bits of comedic moments, but it's mostly just them talking to each other about things they like, and I love that. The actual analyses portion is nothing special, I'll admit that, but the calc-off right after is one of the best moments of the entire show. And definitely my favorite Wiz and Boomstick interaction. I love the music getting progressively more and more intense as the argument slowly gets the two more pissed. But you can tell that they're never actually mad at each other. This is just a playground argument for them. Debating on which of their favorite characters will win in a fight. You can see their passion for versus debating, and it's something I adore given my similar passion for the subject. And also, Boomstick ratios Wiz and then does it again in the fight, so this episode is an automatic S tier. And speaking of S tier, the music is such a banger. It's not one of my favorites of the show, but I still love it. And I'm not even a heavy metal rock fan, so this track did its job really well. What a pleasant surprise that this did its job of being the mid-season finale better than the actual mid-season finale. Oh, and also the show wasn't biased. They've stated multiple times that they aren't and have declined sponsorships at times because they didn't want bias on their show. Seriously, some of you guys need to chill on that.
Beast did lift the whole 60-plus ton tree off the ground.
The statement still stands from my first video that Harley vs. Jinx checks both the boxes of being a good premiere, as it is something that pulls in a ton of viewers and was able to get everyone hyped for the rest of the season. And it delivers on them well too. The analyses are nothing special. I like the cutaway gags, they were pretty funny. They go over their stories well. And of course, there was Harley lifting the 120,000 pound wooden plant off of the surface of the earth. However, it's the animation that carries this episode. If it wasn't as fun as it was, this episode would most likely be a lot lower. And notice how I said fun. The animation itself isn't too special, well, except for the climax, that was awesome. But the fight is just so damn enjoyable. I can rewatch it infinitely. There's so much happening here, but not too much to where it's cluttered. These two just play along with each other for the entire thing, and it's so much fun to watch. A great example is near the beginning where Jinx is talking as Fishbones, going out of her way to make him look sad when Harley calls him out. This episode is just a perfect display of these two's characters. And they never feel annoying either, which I was surprised by, to be honest. One of my favorite bits from the episode was Harley taking out the disguise and asking Jinx to light the dynamite with her doing it. And when Harley gives it to her, Jinx decides to keep the dynamite in her mouth instead of spitting it out. Once again, that was very hilarious and shows Jinx's traits very well. Hell, she even got knocked by Harley's hammer into a merry-go-round and it didn't fall out. She was dedicated to keeping that thing. You gotta give her some respect for that. And it also faces into my favorite part of the fight. The climax is great, but I've rewatched the merry-go-round bit over and over and over again. Harley chasing Jinx, smashing everything in sight, the comedic part where the camera pans out, Harley dodging the lasers, Jinx returning the dynamite to Cinder. I love this part so much. As well as the roller coaster scene right after where they go through so many different dimensions, including Blake versus Mikasa. Although, I will admit the part where they stop mid-air was a bit too cartoony for these two. Like I said, I love the climax with all the hallucinations, acting, visuals. It's such a powerful and intense scene. And also giving Sweet Tooth's death the middle finger was just funny. So, overall, great way to start the season. The animation was so exhilarating, and it really got me pumped for the rest of the season.
There is no life in the void. Only
Deadpool with a gun!
Remember when I said this episode would probably get better for me over time? Well, yeah, I was right. It really grew on me. Sauron vs. Lich King is such an incredible episode. And while I obviously really liked it at first, it's just become so much more keen on me. The analyses are very interesting. I felt way more invested in them than before. There are some parts I really liked, such as the Sauronite joke and Sauron's cutaway, and after letting them soak in more, I feel the analyses do a great job balancing out versus stuff with story. And despite these two having relatively little time in their series, I feel they take advantage of that here as they take more time delving into the characters' tales, instead of just dragging things out like in Gogeta vs. Vegeta. And oh boy, the animation. Man, I don't think I gave it enough praise in my review. I already said stuff about how it's one of the most visually stunning death battles of all time, and that still stands true. The backgrounds look incredible, as do the models, though admittedly Lich King's looks a bit more jagged than Sauron's. There are plenty of shots here that I swear are stripped straight out of a movie with its excellent cinematography. From the shot of the volcano, to Sauron standing imposingly with Lich King coming from behind him, to the following fight where the sky is contrasting with blue and red, symbolizing the two kingdoms coming together in an all-out war. And the same goes for the blizzard going against the spews of fire from the volcano eruption. And it is helped by the amazing score. One King to Rule Them All is one of my favorite tracks of the season. The music fits so perfectly with the intensity of the fight. And also, technically, it's a lyrical track, so that's cool. Another thing that fits this fight perfectly is the voice acting. Philip Sacramento as Lich King does a fantastic job. His performance has many moments that stand out. Though, unfortunately, that means he continues his losing streak. And Ryan Solis as Sauron is absolutely amazing as well. And I'm pretty sure this is his first performance on the show too, so that's very impressive. All of his lines are delivered with such precision, and they are also great from a writing standpoint. I love the I see you line, as it's basically Sauron telling Lich King that his sneak attack has failed despite him not even turning around yet. Sauron being mad at Lich King saying that he serves him now shows part of his character, as he's pissed that someone even had the audacity to say that to him. And Sauron saying that he shall claim what is his isn't just a regular give this to me or whatever. Sauron, to him at least, is stating a fact that Lich King's kingdom is already his. And Lich King gets his moments too, like when he confidently tells Sauron that he will find nothing when he threatens to rip his heart out. I absolutely love the writing here. The staring contest is great, Sauron breaking Frostmourne is raw as hell, the death is cool with Sauron's line, the music adding impact, and Lich King's eyes fading away, symbolizing the end of the Lich King line, and Sauron simply taking a step back and sitting down somehow has more impact than Thanos and Darkseid throwing literal planets at each other. All as the kingdom is now taken over by Mordor, symbolized by the volcanic ash and fire raining down. Man, what an immaculate episode. I can't believe I didn't see it for the masterpiece it was back in my review of it. Some may be wondering why it's at number 6. Well, like I said, I'm ranking this based on my personal enjoyment, And while objectively this is an easy top 3, I personally just get more out of other episodes. But still, fantastic.
Oh, wait, shit! I forgot about Octopussy!
I really like this episode. James Bond vs. John Wick was an episode I was really hyped for. Not just because they're characters I'm really interested in, but also because we don't get characters like these too often. The analyses here are some of my favorite of the entire season. They're just so enjoyable to watch. Talking about James's history and John's story, the jokes, the cutaways, they're all really good. And them being pretty long means they get to take their time. It doesn't feel like they're rushing at all. And of course, naming every Bond movie was pretty awesome. Frankly, it's just nice to hear them talk about characters like these. And I know some people are mixed on the animation, but personally, I really like it. People always bring up the jank in the models, and yeah, I'm not going to argue against that. There are plenty of moments where movements look jagged and robotic. And the models, yeah, they don't look the greatest, but the only one that really looks off to me is James's model. To be honest, John's looks pretty okay. There is some other stuff I'm not a huge fan of, like James's slide when he comes in, and part of me wishes that they treated the exploding pin as a surprise John didn't expect, since that was a factor in James's victory. But none of those problems bother me at all and do not affect my enjoyment of the episode. And notice how I have no major problems for the second half of the fight. That's not to discredit the first half in the Continental. The setup is great, treating it like these two exist in the same universe. Bond using talk to halt the fight was a great way to represent his personality and confidence. The cigarette rocket was fun and unexpected. And the following melee fight had some surprisingly smooth choreography. And the pin fight was just great. The first part is really fun, but the second half is where the animation really picks up and makes for one of the most fun scenes of the season. The action is intense, complementing the music. The Aston Martin's entrance is something I unironically really love. James pulling out the remote with its lights and horns coming on to reveal it outside as it busts through the window is something I see not getting enough credit. And it going out of control, Ratchet and Clank vs. Jak and Daxter style, was a really cool way to make it a hazard and affect the fight, with the two now having to dodge its bullets along with having a knife fight, running, sliding, ducking, and dodging, all while they're still fighting each other. I never get tired of this sequence. I love that after James gets stabbed, the music changes from bouncy and intense to dramatic, and of course, the iconic GoldenEye camera shot was needed, and it's great, and it actually works into the fight fairly well. It shows James's greater quick draw. He shoots through the barrel of John's gun, which is why he doesn't try using it again. And John running through them at James despite getting shot by practically a shotgun bullet and continuing to do so shows how he doesn't go down easy even when he's being hit by things that usually kill normal men. It's just so cool. Everything surrounding the death is also pretty neat, as well as the music. Secret Service is just a fun track. I love how energetic it is, as well as climatic. It's a very nice contrast and something I have fun listening to every now and then. So yeah, some may be surprised by this placement, but personally, I just really like this episode. And it starts off the top 5 for me, aka the big leagues. Well, the really big leagues. Anyways, let's get with it.
You're doing this for nothing. Being a part of the Empire will make Earth better than it ever was.
Done, huh?
Thanks for the tip.
Yeah, this episode is still a masterpiece. I'm sure you guys have heard all of it by now, and yes, the praise this episode gets is all deserved. The analyses are ridiculously fun, nothing too specific about them really, it's just fun hearing them talk about these characters and how horrible they are. Including the Buffy vs. Blade Deconfirmer and Homelander's analysis and the two's relationships with their sons and how it affected them. And the animation, just like I said last time, is also super fun, and very, very dramatic as well, which is always welcome. God, I just gotta give it up for Young Ye as Homelander here. His performance here is nearly flawless. That isn't to say that Tom as Omniman isn't also fantastic, because he most certainly is, but Yang Ye nails every single aspect of Homelander. The condescending psychopath at the beginning with him walking around Omni-Man's house like he owns the place, Coco and all, which makes for one of the best setups in the entirety of the show. The aggressive quick-to-anger side of him, and the man-child side with him basically having a temper tantrum at the end. And might as well go ahead and get this out of the way. The death is raw as hell, but I think everyone knew that. Homelander screaming at the top of his lungs saying he'll kill everyone that Omni-Man loves, including his son, is the last straw for Omni-Man. He was pissed before, but now he's full on done with Homelander, and he makes sure that he knows that by ripping off his jaw and feeding him his own heart in front of a shocked crowd of people, killing not only Homelander, but Homelander's legacy as well. God, this kill is incredible. This whole animation is incredible. I know some aren't happy with the length, but remember people, quality over quantity. Sure, the fight is short, but it's executed flawlessly, and the two pretty much got to use everything in their arsenal. They even were able to get in a really clever way to reference both of their series with the plane scene. And I feel the length was also a good way to represent how big of a stomp this is, and not in the way like they did it in SpongeBob vs. Aquaman. Sure, I feel like they could have had Homelander pose a bit more of a threat to Omni-Man, but he wasn't completely outmatched. He was able to at least stay in the same pace as Omni-Man and even deal some good damage with the supersonic screaming. But all in the end, this was Homelander getting what was coming to him. Omni-Man is a representation of all of his sins coming back to him and making him suffer for it. And I feel that was a perfect way to do this match. Also, I feel like everyone wanted to see Homelander get brutally murdered, so that's a plus. And I can't forget about the music. Diabolical Invincible Me is a pretty good score. Not one of my favorites, but it represents these guys well. I still hate the name though. Love this episode to pieces. It definitely deserved all the attention it got.
Tetsuo!
Hey, what do you know? Magneto vs. Tetsuo got a promotion to my favorite episode of the first half. I adore this episode so much. These two were long overdue for being on the show, so it was really nice to see them both get an episode that is this good. I love the analyses. It is kind of weird that Magneto's feels a bit shorter than Tetsuo's, but that might just be me, I don't know. I just enjoyed what they had to say on them and what makes them so substantial. But the animation is where the main course is. Aside from Magneto's weird cape at the beginning, I don't have any major flaws. And even that is only a few second clip at the very beginning of the episode. But everything from the incredible voice acting from Edward and Joshua, to the amazing music of Ego Death, which is my favorite instrumental track of the whole season and can even contest with some of the best lyrical tracks. The only one that gives it competition is One King to Rule Them All, which apparently isn't even considered an instrumental track. But I love every single bit of the fight. From the fast-paced flying and the two throwing random things at the other, to the intense back and forth between them. Throwing buildings, getting arms chopped off, despite looking like the thing that chopped off Tetsuo's arm not even being that sharp, rebuilding arms, and just flying all over the place, hitting the other left to right. Even though this shot looks way too Dragon Ball-esque and not something you'd expect from Akira. And of course, I adore the shot of the Earth getting affected by their powers, and the slow shot of Magneto's helmet breaking. Pretty much everything after this point is done to perfection. This is also where the writing gets the most creative, from Magneto using Tetsuo's own metal arm to strangle him, to Magneto using the blood he spat out earlier to create saw blades. And of course, I cannot forget to talk about the transformation into the mutated form of Tetsuo, the shadow getting slowly bigger as Magneto looks up in pure terror, and Tetsuo screaming in pain and getting into Magneto's mind asking for help is a really dramatic and sad scene. And they even sneak in the Welcome to Die reference in there. You're not missing anything if you don't get it or notice it, but if you pay attention, it's a neat little detail. Magneto's scream when the Big Bang happens and him now calling Tetsuo a poor child instead of an impudent child just reaffirms my love for his performance. And I also love the kill itself. Magneto uses a small laser to quickly put Tetsuo out of his misery, and all Tetsuo can mutter out of his telepathy is a thank you. This death is so great. Might just be the most emotional one for me this season. Sure, I love SpongeBob vs. Aquaman's and Tantra vs. Jonathan's, but I feel like this one had a bit more of an impression on me. I'm really glad this one was able to turn out so well. And also, this was the first episode DJ wrote for, so it was cool to see him start off with such a banger. Really can't wait to see what other work he does for the show in Season 10.
I, for one, would miss all the fireworks and the Easter bunnies and the New Year's Eve parties where I get drunk and depressed and do things I don't remember, but always regret.
About 4 months later, and I'm still baffled by this episode's existence. SpongeBob vs. Aquaman is such a good time. A fun time I never thought we would get. We don't get series like these on the show too often, and I really love cartoons, so it was nice to see both get represented. And man, I am glad these two were able to get an episode this remarkable. I adore the analyses. It's really funny to see Wiz try and bring down SpongeBob, but Boomstick shows him how powerful he is, while Wiz tries to be Aquaman's hype man, but Boomstick shows him how much he sucks. And yes, they do treat it like a massive stomp, not even sugarcoating it, but I feel like that works in the favor for the animation, but more on that in a minute. Wiz's voice acting here is some of the most expressive he's ever been, constantly sounding exasperated or bewildered at some of the stuff they talk about, and that especially goes for the post-analysis. This episode is really, really funny. Wiz talking about SpongeBob's speed feat is the obvious highlight, but there's also a lot in the analysis and animation that I find hilarious. Speaking of the animation, I really love how they play it out. They make the most out of Aquaman's limited abilities and even push it to where he does stuff that is far beyond anything he's ever done, with him pulling all of the water out of the ocean. And while they don't use the full extent of SpongeBob's abilities, they use enough to where it doesn't feel barren, but not cluttered. I'm really glad they decided to make this episode something special, from all the references to SpongeBob and such, and also Aquaman's dilemma, with him finding out he's the worst Aquaman and feeling worthless about it. I find it really sweet that SpongeBob is able to relate to Aquaman and help him find acceptance in the fact by telling him to always get back up no matter what. I just love how it shows SpongeBob's kindness in a unique way, and we yet again have another tear-inducing ending. I find the new respect and friendship the two have for each other really nice. Aquaman's final words are sad, and SpongeBob drawing the #1 Ocean Man sign was the thing that broke us in our reaction. I really love it. It's really helped by the voice acting too. Tom Schalk as SpongeBob is a near perfect impression. His voice can be a bit too deep at times, but still, it's nearly flawless. And yes, I know everyone and their mother has said this, but it's crazy that this is the same guy who played Omniman, Dio, and the frickin' Kool-Aid Man. Keston also does an incredible job as Aquaman. His emotions are portrayed great, and he's able to get the tone of what he's speaking just right. This was such a unique idea for an episode, and I'm glad that it turned out great. Hope they decide to do more like this. And now, it is finally time for #1. If you're good at process of elimination, then I'm sure you know it, but anyways, here we go.
Oh my god, is he actually going to win?
No.
Oh my god!
Yeah, I really love this episode. Like, a lot. To be honest, I wasn't expecting this episode to take #1 at all. Sure, I really liked it when it came out, I thought it was great, but I thought it was still outmatched by some of the other episodes. But looking back, this episode is nearly everything I wanted it to be. And that is just pure fun and hype. There aren't any huge emotional scenes or big moments that make you think or anything. And yes, while I absolutely love those in death battles, sometimes it's nice to watch a fight that's just a plain good time. And you can tell that from our reaction. We just went crazy for nearly everything that happened, especially the death. I wasn't rooting for anyone in particular during the episode, but pretty much everyone else I was watching with was going for Silver. And since we all thought Trunks was going to win this, we were so shocked to see Silver actually take it, as you can tell by us screaming followed by pure silence from shock. And that is an experience I love to have when it comes to death battles. And it was one of the most fun episodes to react to, and I'm so glad we all got to do it together. Also, I have just got to say that this episode has made me like Silver a lot. He's one of my favorite Sonic characters now. Not sure if he's beat out Eggman as my favorite, but who knows. It gave me a really huge appreciation for him. Now, honestly, I don't have much on this episode I actually want to say aside from all the basics. I love the analyses, though admittedly I like Silver's a lot more. The music, Hedge of Tomorrow, is absolutely amazing and easily my favorite track of the whole season. And yeah, but like I was saying, the fight is just that exciting. There were so many cool shots happening like every 2 seconds, and it was just cool. Sure, Trunks is a little stiff in the beginning, and I feel the first It's No Use doesn't really fit too well, but everything else is basically perfect. The sprite work is amazing, thank you Origin, and the voice acting is immaculate. Trunks has some misses here and there, but Silver's VA absolutely killed it, which is basically a given since it's rumored that they got the official voice actor. But everything from the second It's No Use to the Cronus control and even the battle cries and grunts, it feels like they're giving it their all. And like I said, there are so many cool shots here. Silver lifting the building, Silver throwing the ring, redirecting the Masenko Ha, creating the giant boulder and chucking it at Trunks, the transformation into Super Saiyan and returning the boulder to Cinder, the rip-off line followed by kicking Silver into space, Silver destroying the moon, the really comedic moment with the cards, Silver redirecting the Gallic gun beams away from Earth and back to Trunks, the Super Saiyan God transformation followed by that really impactful punch, the final flash, reality glitching around them, everything in Xenoverse, the death itself, which I thought was really cool even without the shock factor, and Silver looking over the Rumen City. As you can see, I just basically summarized the entire animation. That's how much awesome stuff happens in this fight. Man, I just love this episode. Like I said, there are plenty of episodes that are objectively better, but this is my personal favorite of the season, and what a season it was. Woo! And there's that. There were so many great hits this year, and I really gotta thank all of the cast and crew for putting it together. I also gotta thank this season for finally getting me started with this channel, and in turn, helping me meet so many people and friends. I'm not sure if it's my favorite season. It had an overall better average of good episodes than other seasons, but it didn't quite hit the highs of seasons like 8 or 6. So, for now, I'll say that this is my third favorite season. Once again, I'm very sorry for how long this took, but this comes at another opportunity for me to plug my Twitter again, as I try to keep you all updated on videos I'm working on there. I am getting started on my Season 10 predictions, but it'll probably be more general predictions as well as me talking about the confirmed episodes. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the season and video. I'll see you all next time.